Hello, welcome back to another fabulous video on my channel. I'm Jacob from Jacob's Books Corner, and today we are talking about the 40 books I read in December. So I had this conundrum about, I don't know, I can tell you the exact date that I had the conundrum. We're gonna say December 21st. I had a conundrum that I was not gonna be able to reach my goal. And I just got into a kick of reading, and I read a lot of graphic novels and a lot of other stuff that I've been meaning to get to that I was really looking forward to reading. I really just ran through it. Essentially what happened here. So overall, we have 40 books to talk about. Some of them have videos that I'm going to point you to. I'd like to mention that I can only have 5 videos in the cards, so there will be links down below as well. Or I'll just pick which one I think would be the easiest for you to find on the list that I have. Alright, let's get started. The first one we talk about is Call Us What We Carry by Amanda Gorman. I read this at some point during December. It doesn't have a set date, but it was read in December. With Amanda Gorman, Call Us What We Carry, I just learned here recently that the main poem, the long poem of the book, was what she read at the sermon for when the new president got inducted in the United States. And then the rest of the story is, the rest of the poetry is a lot about feelings and other shit that poetry is normally about. And I thought she had a really good voice, and I thought it came off really nicely, and it felt good, and I felt like it had enough kick to it that, yeah, I think it was good. So I gave it a 5. Was it my favorite 5? No. Then we have Crave #1 by Wolf Tracy. I read this because I watched someone, Capri, do it, and I was like, oh, that looks like it's going to be fun. I was wrong. That was horrible. It was a 2-star. I hated it. It was a 2. Jacob, don't lie to yourself. It's a 2. I did not like it. I didn't enjoy it at all. Maybe it was a 3.25, whatever. This follows a girl who ends up having to go to a school very much like Twilight. And at the school, you can very much tell there's something different about everybody. And then you realize that there might be differences about her too. And then, so forth and so forth. I tend to like these type of stories. I don't tend to find them very cringy. For some reason, that day I found it extremely cringy, and I did not like it. And I finished it in December. I think I started it in November. I finished it in December. Next one we have is Daphne by Josh Malerman. This follows a group of girls who are basketball players, volleyball players, something along those lines. And they end up hearing the story about Daphne, as if you say her name a few times in your head, some people will start to die or something under those lines, and you gotta pass them along like a venereal disease. It really is a metaphor for depression and things along those lines. And so I ended up DNFing it about 30 to 40% into the book because it really was just fucking my head too badly. Was not exactly what I wanted, and so I ended up not going with it. Next one is Women Without Shame by Sandra Sinestros. I just did not vibe with this book whatsoever. It's a poetry collection. This was a part of Goodreads' choice for best poems. Just a few of these you'll see is the reason why I read them. And I ended up doing that video, but this was in form for that video that I ended up canceling. And I didn't like it. I gave it a 2. A lot of people do like it. I do recommend it. It was just not for me. I didn't like the writing a lot and things. Just not my type of poetry that I enjoy. Okay, we're just going to talk about Throne of Glass overall together, okay? And it'll be the easiest way to do this. I'll describe what the first book is about. Where's the Assassin's Blade? I must have read the Assassin's Blade the month before. Okay. We're gonna talk about the rest of Throne of Glass, and I'm gonna give you out my ratings, but I have spoilery vlogs for all these books. I'll link a playlist to kind of just overall. Empire Storms, I'll talk about when we get to Empire Storms, when that's coming out and things, so anybody who's following that video series, you guys can figure out the endings. So I read Throne of Glass again. This was a reread. I did this in person because I was posting these videos, and I was like, oh, we should just jump back into it. So as at the end, it follows her as she is getting out of the salt mines from being a slave. The son of the king chooses her to be his king's champion in this battle royale type of thing. As she wins, she becomes the king's champion. And we learn a few information. It's a very simple, smaller book that's set very much in the castle of glass. And that's this one. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Greta Midnight is still one of my favorite sequels I've ever read. It's the sequel to this one. This follows the events. I'm not going to talk spoilers anymore. I give this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Then we have Heir of Fire, which I also very much liked by the end, which I gave another 5 out of 5 stars. Then we have Queen of Shadows, which I think by the end it really did solidified itself as a 5 out of 5 as well, and deserves to be on that pile. Now we're getting to territory you guys have not really seen, and that's Empire Storms. This video ended up not making it out due to the fact that Tower of Dawn sent me into a rating slump, which we'll talk about very shortly. And when we finish Throne of Glass, we'll talk about where we're going next for Sarah. That's where we're going to stop. I have Tower of Dawn to talk about a little bit later, Well, there's a few books in between here that we need to talk about first before we can get there. It's pretty far away. I finished it a lot later. I read a lot of other things in between. We have And Yet. This is another poetry collection by Kate Beer. And I don't really actually remember what this one is about. I'm sorry, I'm really bad. Sean Tiller's Sphere, with her debut poetry, What Kind of Woman, became an instant bestseller. Second full-length book of traditional poetry, and yet dives deeper into the themes that are hallmarks of writing: motherhood, friendship, love, and loss. And I ended up giving it like a 3 out of 5. I can't remember if I listened to this one or not, and sometimes it does like hinder my effect. Then I also read On the Sun Swallowing by Dakota Warren. Once again, I was off for this one video. And this was a much darker poetry collection that I ended up really liking. This is about women, and it's ghosts, and it's like gods, and a few other different things that are like explored and stuff. It was a very expensive poetry collection, and luckily enough, it did work out for me because I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. It was definitely my top contenders to be the winner of the year. No, I've read some other 5s. I just think that one really spoke to me. Alrighty. Now, guys, we get into the comic book century. Okay, I read like 40 comic books in one day. Sometimes that's what happens, okay? So we have Marvel Zombies. This is by Robert Kirkman. This obviously follows Marvel Zombies. I'm actually planning on doing a comparison video of Marvel Zombies and DC's, which we'll talk about next. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought this was a major disappointment, and for some reason the Disney Plus show, or What If, it's one episode that happened with it, I felt like was better, which, you know what? That says a lot, because I really don't like What If. I really didn't like it at all, and I did think the Zombies was better over there. Yeah, this one really follows Magneto and things, and I just didn't like the characters that were chosen. I didn't like the development of the relationships and stuff, and once again, I do think I'm going to make a video somewhat dedicated to this whole concept, because interestingly enough, DC has their own version of it, and I think it's kind of fun to compare. We have Deceased by Tom Taylor, and this one was so much more fascinating. I loved seeing all the characters interact from DC. I liked where Harley and Poison's story went. I liked Batman's story was particularly amazing. It was longer, it was brutal, it was so bloody and so graphic, and I loved it. And it just felt much more under my own personal taste for a zombie story. Then I also read DC's Dead Planet, which is book 2. See, I didn't pick up Marvel Zombies 2. I didn't do that. I did pick up DC's Dead Planet. I think I need to reread it. I read it so fast. And I'd be curious to read the rest in the series. Well, I think there's like 5 or 6. And I really liked where it went. It went some weird places, I'm not going to lie to you. And how they got around the dead characters being dead was also very interesting to me. But I very much liked it. And I chose Breakout. I thought Breakout was the original Marvel Zombies, not realizing Marvel Zombies was called Marvel Zombies. So this was not the book's fault. Overall, the Marvel books I ended up reading this time around were not hits. And I don't really know if that's Marvel's fault or not. Breakout, The New Avengers is number 1. This is by Brian Michael Bendis, who I fucking adore as a writer, so I don't know why I didn't like this. It was more of like, this is a sequel story to something I've never read before, and my brain just was like, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, I'm just bored. So I gave it a 2. A lot of people get it a 4. I do recommend. It's fine. Then I read Revival, Volume 1, You're Among Friends, by Tim Seeley. This follows people that are coming back from the dead who seem normal and just fine until they're not. And it was fascinating. Not good enough, in my opinion, to pick up the rest of the series. There's only one set of these books that I was like, oh, I'd read more from, other than Deceased. And this was not it. I still really liked it, and I felt like the twist really thought it was really violent, which I really liked. But I think some of the storylines just dragged on a little too much, and I didn't like the closure that I gave at the end of the first volume. Not like, oh, you ended with a cliffhanger, let me know what you know next. But there was a story wrap-up that I did not think worked, in my opinion. Then I read Saga 59 and 56, or 59 and 60. I'll put up one of the covers up on the screen. This is by Brian K. Vaughan. Saga is one of my favorite graphic novels of all time. Saga 59, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Saga 60 broke me. And that's all you need to know. And then we moved on to John Wick Volume 1. This is by Greg Pak. It's a 3 out of 5. This is like a prequel to John Wick, and it just, in my opinion, ended up hurting the overall bad story that John Wick is. I know that's going to piss some people off, but I don't think John Wick movies are particularly, insightful with their stories. I think they're pretty on the low of the basicness, and I think the dialogue is probably the worst part, in my opinion. But I think the action's amazing, and I didn't think the action lived up to anywhere near the hype in the graphic novel. That's bad. You did a bad job then. And we went on to Richard Peake's The Best Man. The Best Man was an interesting time. It had my favorite thing where we follow a character for like 8 or 9 years. We follow this kid from the time he's like a kindergartner to like 6th or 7th grade, and he ends up being a part of all these like different weddings, and one of the weddings ends up being a gay wedding. It's written for children, and I think it does a great job for the like where it's being written for. I definitely give this book to my older sister. I think the bullying's handled really well, and I think the conversation about homophobia and stuff is really handled really well as well. And so yeah, I just really felt like it was a memoir. Like the whole time I'm reading, I'm like, this person is real, which I guess is a sentiment to the author's ability to write, because it's not based on anybody he knows. From what I understand from the research I did, it's just a story that he thought up. So I gave it a 4 out of 5. Then I read Good Girl, Bad Blood, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, number 2. I got number 2 and number 3 back to back. I had number 3 for a long time thinking it was number 2, and then I got number 2, and then I pushed it off because I was reading all these books for Sarah J. Maas. And then I had like 1 day left to read Good Girl, Bad Blood, and I was like, okay, we'll read it in one sitting. And thank God it was a one sitting read. It was so fast. The podcast angle was amazing. It was such a great addition. And the story of the missing person wasn't as high octane. The stakes weren't as great. But I really, really liked it. Sadly, I did not give it a 4. I'm going to have a whole video talking about these in a very spoilerly fashion for anybody who's curious. I even have like a non-spoilerly section in the beginning talking about all 3 books after I read them. Just for the simple fact that, like, Holly Jackson was on something. She chose chaos for the rest of the series, and I think it really just showed. That's all I'll say. I liked it. It was very fast. I did enjoy it, but chaos was chosen. I read the first 3 novellas in the Bane Chronicles as I've started my reread of Shadowhunters in timeline order, which means we start in the 1700s, where what really happened in Peru takes place in. It's the 1700s, maybe it's the 1600s. In my personal opinion, I actually don't think what really happened in Peru should be read as one. I really think you should just jump around in that story. So you read the first one, and then you move on to, then you figure out where the time period of the second story takes place. Because there's one in here that takes place in the 2000s or something, where he goes back for a 3rd time. That, in my personal opinion, it's a little spoilerly. So like, if you've never read them, I mean, this is recommended to be read after you get done the Mortal Instruments anyways. But then I read the second one, which was The Midnight Air, and then I read the third one, Vampire Scones and Edmund Herondale. The first one was a 4, the second one was a 3, the third one was a 5. Vampire Scones and Edmund Herondale is still one of my favorite novellas. We'll talk about a little more about Cassie Clare as I'm rereading them in preparation for the new book, but also then I read Jessica Jones Volume 1 on Cage, also by Brian Michael Bendis, and I have to say I didn't really like it either. I mean, this one wasn't a 2, it was a 3, thank God. This one follows Jessica, and it deals with pregnancy and birth and children, and that's all I can really tell you about it. I felt like there's one thing about it that I really liked that I think Disney should really think about looking into for future Marvel project. A big part of the reason why I feel like Marvel has been at a very bad low is because there's not enough Easter eggs, there's not enough movement to a bigger story. I think by the end of phase 4, we were finally getting movement, but most of phase 4 we sat pretty stilt. And for TV shows like Miss Marvel, or TV shows like Daredevil or She-Hulk or things like that, I really liked how Jessica Jones used superheroes doing superhero things in the background, because technically she wouldn't be participating in the crime, that type of battle. And I think that's what Marvel needs to look at and grab from, in my personal opinion. And that's really the only good thing I can talk about it. Next one is Whiteout by Greta Rucka. This I read because there's a movie with Kate Beckinsale that I've been interested in watching for a long time. And this is the graphic novel based on it. This is set over in Alaska, I'm pretty sure, and someone is getting brutally murdered out in the snow, and it's a murder mystery type of thing. I hate it. I gave it a 1. Then we have She-Hulk Law in This Order by Charles Soule. I really wanted to love She-Hulk Volume 1 Law in This Order. I went in with so much high hope because I really liked the TV show. I thought the TV show was pretty bad week to week, but it was a great binge. I always binge watch it after it's over. It's just my Marvel or my Disney Plus routine. And it was amazing binge. It was so much better. And the book has some of the worst art I've ever seen in my entire life. Sorry, artists. The cover did you dirty. So dirty. So then we have Red Sonja Volume 1, Queen of Plagues by Gail Simone. Red Sonja was a phenomenal read. It's fantasy. I just felt like it worked perfectly. The action was really well done. I felt like it was sexual, but wasn't super sexual. And I felt like, even though the cover gives off a very different vibe than the actual book is, and I don't know, I really like the character of Red Sonja as well. So that was a hit for me. I read The 12 Days of Christmas, a pop-up celebration. I don't think it was this one. Lindsay Lohan read it to me.
Happy holidays. I'm Lindsay Lohan, and these are the 12 Days of Christmas.
In a Netflix video, so there you go. I didn't rate it for obvious reasons. And then I read Lazarus Volume 1, Family by Greg Rucka, so he can write. It's interesting, I didn't mean to pick two Greg Ruckas. This is such a fantasy world of where people have, but these things are called Lazarus, where they can come back to life and things, and it's all about family and stuff like that. And I was a big fan. I was very enamored by it. It was beautifully well written, and I couldn't have been happier. I definitely have plans to pick up that rest of that comic book series. Then for Christmas, I went on Alison Corcoran website and got A Charmed Defensive, which I think that deal is over. I don't think you can get it anymore. But I got it and I read it on Christmas. It's like 22 pages, and it's over the fact if these two characters should get married or not, and I just loved it. I'm not going to tell you what it is about. It is a sequel, kind of like a little like extra epilogue to a book that is in my top 10 of the year. Then I read Unlock Your Storybook Heart, You're Your Own Fairy Tale, number 3 by Amanda Lovelace. I enjoyed Amanda Lovelace's writing really early on, and I just think it's gotten so bad. I did not like this at all. I ended up giving like it a 2 out of 5. It's just not the type of poetry I enjoy anymore. This is very inspirational, like go save yourself instead of have a king save you or something along those lines. And yeah, it works for its own thing, but I just can't take a whole entire collection based around it. At least not anymore. Then I read As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. I wanted to jump in this one so fast because the ending of the last one was really propelling. I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5. Once again, this video will come out eventually this year. I think it's going to have a March release for some reason. That's where my brain's been putting it for a while. This one got really chaotic. To be honest with you, I think the more chaotic it got, the more it jumped the shark, the better I enjoyed it. So like on one note, I think it worked really well for me. But also like on another note, like it just got so out of hand and crazy and stuff. I remember liking it better the second half than the first half. Then we have to talk about 2 of my favorite books of all time, as I did my annual rereads every year. If you guys did not know, every year I read The Sweetest Kind of Poison by Katie Weismer and Poems for the End of the World. I sadly did not get to Breakable Things, as I was reading these on my Kindle while laying down, so I don't own that one digitally, I just own it physically. These ones I own digitally, and actually I own the original print of this. I'm so happy to have that in my life. Either way, for Poems for the End of the World, these are both 5. Today's Kind of Poison is about a toxic relationship and how badly that could injure you, and ways to overcome that. This one's more generalistic about Kay Weismer as a person and stuff that happens in her life and stories that happen around her, and I adored it. The only book I did not get to in my annual reread was Lily Reinhardt's collection, so we'll have to jump around to that in January this month. So that should be up on my wrap-up next month. I read Sweetest Kind of Poison. I read it every year since it came out December 19th. I read it for the first time in 2018. And so this is like my 7th, 8th, maybe 9th reread. And then this came out in 2020. So this is like reread number 5 for this one. I have reviews talking about both these. So I'll link one of them up in the card. Okay, now we have Tower Dawn. Tower Dawn is a book that takes place during Empire Storms. And the tangent read really ruined this entire book for me. I recommend it. Honestly, I do. I think the ending of Empire Storms is so excruciating. Like, the cliffhanger is so bad that, yeah, I did want to jump into Kingdom Ash, but I had to come back and finish this. This book was the literal definition of a reading slump for me personally. It just was not me, not my vibe, not my character. I gave it a 3.25 overall. It's fine. I do wonder, as I have to go back through it again to edit all my footage, if I'll find better nuances with it or anything like that. I don't think so, but it's a possibility, I guess. I read Nanowrimo, which is Miss Marvel Volume 1, G. Wilson Willow, or G. Willow Wilson, one or the other. And I really liked it. This was a 4. This was a much different take. So I guess there's parts of it I really liked, but also I think I enjoyed, because I didn't read it first, the Disney Plus show a little better. They make her an Inhuman in this one, and humans aren't a thing in Marvel, for Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I really like Miss Marvel there. I think the actress they chose for it was so good. I also really liked her parents better in the TV show. I thought they were much more caring and kind, whereas these ones seemed really, really aggressive, which I'm sure is maybe accurate, but like it was really aggressive in my opinion. Then, continuing on with my rereads for Shadowhunters, I read Clockwork Angel in 2 different forms. So I read the book, Clockwork Angel, which I gave a 5 out of 5. Still one of my favorite Shadowhunter books. I don't know. We'll figure out by the end. I will definitely do a ranking video. We'll get that around in February. We'll do a ranking video in February. But Clockwork Angel, I adored. I did not love the graphic novel. I like the style. I think it makes sense, the anime style for the series and stuff. But there's just certain things about it that just irked me so badly that I gave it a 4. It wasn't trash, but wasn't my favorite thing in the world. Then I read Low Volume 1, The Delirium Hope by Rick Mender. I love this. This was a sci-fi story, or I guess sci-fi-ish fantasy story about this family living in this like big sea world type of thing. It was good. I liked the dynamics. I will probably pick up Volume 2. That was one of those ones I walked away from thinking, I'll read more of you. And then to close out the year, I closed out with Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I have a whole vlog dedicating this, so I'll link you over there instead. And this was a 4 out of 5 for that book. But yeah, alright. That's everything. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed, please give me a thumbs up, comment down below, hit subscribe button. I'll see you next time for another video.